Welcome to Stitching with Cindy Botts. Today I begin a series of 4 quilt blocks to make one lap quilt. Now I don't usually make large quilts anymore just because of the expense, and I have so many of them. But I thought I'd try my hand at creating a block, and I wanted it to be big enough that it could have a block inside a block and just a different technique. So here we are. I originally wanted my main block here to be 16 by 16. It came out at 15 and a half. So pretty good. Then I added this 4.5-inch strip here so that when it's sewn on it'll be a 4-inch border, and so that'll bring us up to 15 plus 4 and 4, almost a 24-inch block. So it'll be nice when I put 2 by 2 to make the lap quilt, and then add a small inner border and outer border, and I'm hoping it finishes at 60 by 60 for the lap quilt. So let's get started. I added to my center main block this 1/2-inch border. I think it offsets this block. And the reason I did that was because this block has 5 small blocks to make up the row, and it's easier to divide 5 into 15 than 5 into 16 for all your angles and things. So that's why I did that. I think it turned out okay. So let's look at the directions of how to cut these pieces. I'm going to try to get that in screen nicely so that you can see what we're working with. And let's start with the top row. Okay, we talked about this. This is a 1/2-inch border, so I cut this at 1 inch and then sewed it on at the end. All right, so let's talk about this top row. There are 5 of the blocks. 5 divided into 15 is 3. So you gotta allow for your seam allowances. So this is 3.5-inch block, and the same across. All right, so to get the corner blocks and the center blocks, you're gonna cut. Now this is a background fabric. This has a white with gray, and this is a pure white. So with my background fabric, I need to cut 8 3.5-inch squares, and that will give me my corners and my centers. Now to do the half square triangle, I'm going to want to cut this at 4 inches so that when I lose some width and length when I do this seam, it will come out correct. Okay, so you're going to need to cut 4 4-inch squares of the red and 4 4-inch squares of the background. All right, and what that will create for us is 8 half square triangles, and we're going to trim those down to 3.5. Now to make your half square triangles, you take your one piece of fabric, you draw a diagonal on it, then you lay your other fabric on it, and you sew 1/4 inch on one side and 1/4 inch on the other side, and then when you cut it on the line, press it back, you get your half square triangle. All right, so that's just a quick review of how to do your half square triangle. So that will give you your 8. All right, so when you trim down using your tool, you just lay the line on the seam and you trim the excess off. All right, the line goes on your long seam. Okay, so that'll give you your bottom and your top row and your side rows. Okay, so those pieces are created. Now to do this center. This is a 3.5 inch. This is a 3.5 inch. These two on top are 3.5 inch white squares. So you'll need 4 3.5 inch white squares for the corners. And then you'll need a 3.5 inch red square for the center. Of course, you're going to use whatever colors you desire and you choose. But for mine, that's what I did. Now, to make this configuration, you're going to want to cut your squares that you start with larger, because when you cut for the diagonals, you're going to lose some width and length. All right, so you're going to cut this one and this one at 5-inch squares. All right, and you're going to cut this one at a 5-inch square. That's going to give you some extra for this, but that's okay. Now, because when you create this, the way I do it, you're going to actually have a right and a left side piece, so you're going to have to make more than you actually need. All right, so let's talk about how you do that. Again, you start with the half square triangle, drawing that diagonal line, sewing on a 1/4 inch on one side, 1/4 inch on the other, and cutting down the middle, giving you your half square triangle. Now I'm just going to kind of finger press that down. All right, then what you do is you take your other 5-inch square, you lay it on top, and you draw your diagonal going the other way. All right, so then you do your sewing a 1/4 inch on this side, 1/4 inch on that side, and when you fold it back, you get this configuration. Now, to trim this down to the correct size, you are going to lay your ruler again here on the seam line, and then you're going to lay the center one on your center seam. So you're laying on this seam and this seam. Okay, so that's how you do that. Then it's just a matter of sewing them together to make this row and this row, this row and this row and this row. Happy stitching. I hope that you do this project. Again, the border is a 4.5 inch border, and then you just take and make 4 4.5 inch wide squares, lay them on the corner, draw your diagonal, sew on your diagonal, trim it, fold it back, and that will give you this circle effect. Happy stitching. Please like and subscribe. Have a great day.